Hello, friend. This is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com, and today I want to talk to you about the cheat code for the universe. Now, in life, there's a saying that art imitates life or life imitates art, sometimes used either way, but even when I was a kid, there were cheat codes in video games where you typed in these things, whatever the code may be, or it was a patch or something that would get it to work a certain way, and you would then have infinite lives and whatever you needed to beat the game. But I think people have missed out on hidden truths that are in the scripture, and they're plain as day, but the power behind them is hidden from the natural man. They read the scripture and they see death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they think, oh, well, that's just talking about if you're swearing before a court or this or before a king, and they just naturalize the spirituality away from it and get no results. They see, thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy way, and think, well, that's just talking about, and they just rationalize it away. And while it doesn't work like a cheat code in the sense that it's instantly fully in effect, but when you speak forth words of life, words of faith, you get results. Now, the reason why it doesn't go into effect immediately is because of our faith, or lack thereof. It's also because of preconditioned programming we've had for decades. If you're 20 years old, you've had 20 years of programming, a lot of it bad. Now, not on purpose, it wasn't malicious, most likely, but people who were programmed poorly, taught poorly, consequently taught you poorly as well. And because, especially as a young child, you don't question it, when you start getting to the point of being able to question it, your questions are formed based on the bad programming. So you're not forming questions that will actually get to the solution. It's just questions that keep you bound in the same programming. And so affirmations are so important because you are overriding that old programming. You're basically installing new programming that will eventually take over and become your operating system. So if you're a negative person, you're naturally negative, you're naturally looking for what could be wrong or what's going to go wrong next. And when you say affirmations, you start to instill that new programming in you. And basically, like an operating system, you start recreating the programming that focuses you on the world, how you see things, how you see events. And what's most important is you start creating a new picture of yourself. And as you think in your heart, so are you. And so you start having the life of the person who you've thought yourself to be. But that takes some work. And unlike the cheat codes in video games, it doesn't work instantly. Now, for some things it does. Some things you don't have a whole lot of hang-ups, and so you can instantly just get rid of that bad programming and start getting good results from that issue. But for most people, the issues that are really plaguing them and bringing them down and holding them back, most of the time it's money, health, relationships, opportunities. Those are the main things that kind of hover in most people's lives that they have issues with. And those are the things that are the main bad programming has been instilled in us as early as young children. We saw how our parents interacted. We saw how other people interacted with one another. We went to schools and we saw how those people interacted, how authority was viewed and how the children were viewed, and all these things that started creating in us a worldview and creating within us an image of ourselves of who we think we are or can be. And so children, when they're early on, they have big goals and dreams, and there's nothing stopping them. They're fearless in many respects, unless something just terrible has happened to them. But in most normal circumstances, they are fearless in approaching the things they want. And yet, by the time they're adults, they're fearful, they're squeamish, or they're just completely given up on those hopes and dreams ever happening. This is where affirmations come in and become so tremendously important for you. This is why I've written a number of books about affirmations and positivity, because While people think, oh, that's just self-help, mumbo-jumbo, positivity, it doesn't even matter, it's flaky stuff. It's not. And I know it seems like it on the surface level, but it is so important. If you don't deal with that bad program, you just keep covering it up and pretend like it doesn't exist, you're going to keep look at your life right now. That's the best you could possibly hope for. Nothing better. Not even possible for it to be better. But if you will change by renewing your mind, which the scripture plainly commands, if you'll do that by affirmations and by thinking when a thought comes in your mind that is not positive, is not uplifting, that is not good, is not just, it's not lovely, it's not of good report, and you cast that off and you start thinking about something good, something just, something holy, something pure, something virtuous, when you do that, you are starting to create new programming. And as far as biologically in your brain, you're literally creating new wiring, so to speak. Those neural synapses and the old, well-worn paths that you go to of negativity are slowly getting rewritten. And if you do that enough, eventually those paths, the old paths, are gone for all practical purposes, and you now default to positivity. You default to good things. You default to positive, uplifting, edifying thoughts. And your words reflect that. This is where affirmations come in. They're so important that you speak forth those words of life. You speak forth the things that you want, not what you don't want. And I'll give you an example I look at in God, because I look at God and I want to be like Him. As it talks about in Ephesians, as dear children, we're followers of Him. We're imitators of Him. We're looking up to Him and trying to copy and imitate what He does. And God made an interesting point. He said, if I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine and the fullness thereof. Now, this is something important to think about how you approach what you're speaking. Too often people, it's become a comforting mechanism of you have a problem, you go tell someone else about it. Now, it's not even most of the time because you're wanting the other people to help you. That could be a valid reason, especially if you're in business or marriage or whatever it may be, and you have to tell the other person. But people most often just go out and tell everybody about this problem they've had, the bad day they've had, and whatever. But I look at this and say, I want to be as close to being like my Father. As Jesus said, be ye therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And God says, if I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, the fullness thereof. That's that abundance mentality He wants us to have. We're not looking at lack. We're not talking about lack. We're not talking about hunger, because the world is ours, the fullness thereof, because God has given it freely to us. He gives us freely all things to enjoy. And when you approach life that way, you're expecting the best, you're looking for the best, you're speaking the best, you will get the best. Now, I want to be clear so there's no people dropping out immediately and, well, it didn't work, I tried it for one day. You have years of programming that is not working for you. Give it some time. I'm not saying it's going to take you 10 years, but give it a few months at least of you affirming the things you want and changing your mindset, changing your speech, changing your thought life. Now, you'll have some changes real quickly, I guarantee you. There'll be people who have been in your life for years and they've been a thorn in your side. They'll disappear, or they'll become great. You'll see things like that happen real quickly. But some of the longer term things you may have been having, it may take you a little bit of time. Don't give up. Don't fret. Look for the good that is happening and changing around you and work with that. But don't give up. And don't go around talking about the things you don't want. Think, God, if He was hungry, He wouldn't tell a person, because the world is His and the fullness thereof. Think about the abundance. Would I tell somebody there's lack, I don't have enough, I can't be enough, when I know all things are possible because I believe? When I know with God all things are possible and I'm walking with God and I'm believing, why would anything be impossible to me? And when you adopt that boldness of mind, the mind of Christ in you, and you renew your mind daily to that, you will start to have the life that you want, the glorious life that you want. And it will be a light to other people who've seen flaky religions and the deadness of most professing Christendom, and they see the life and abundance that you are reflecting to the world. My friend, I pray this is a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.